Good evening. I hereby call to order the January 11th, 2016 council meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. DeJohn?
Here.
Mrs. Finney?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mr. Mercurio?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder? Mrs. Teresi?
Here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now move on to the acceptance of minutes of our last council meeting, which was December 14, 2015. Hope everyone has had the opportunity to look over the minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
second by Mr. DeJohn. Are there any suggested changes, deletions, or additions to the minutes?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Mrs. Sabetta.
thank you. My last Park and Rec report, I did have a special happy birthday to a committee member, Larry Sophia, who will be turning 95 on December 21st. He had been an active volunteer throughout our city and a decorated, honored World War II veteran. And I would like that added, please.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain. I was not at that meeting. Thank you.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved as amended. We will now move on to the minutes of our special council meeting of January 6th, 2016. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mr. Mano. Are there any suggested changes, deletions, or amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of our January 6th meeting of 2016 have been approved as written. We will now move on to correspondence and announcements, and I would like to begin that section to welcome our two new council members this evening, Donna Finney and Diane Snyder, who is absent this evening. Both women are returning after a 2-year absence to City Council, and we'd like to welcome you back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
We're
Also
glad to have you. Would also like to thank my council colleagues for their nomination and confidence in my reelection to the seat of council president. I thank you for your confidence. And before I ask if there's any other correspondence this evening, I'd like to introduce our council members to the residents here in council chambers and to those watching at home, so that everyone knows who we are and what committee we will be chairing. And we will begin on the right side of our dais, and we'll begin with Joe Mercurio, who will be Chairman of Public Works and Services. We'll move on to Donna Finney, who will be our Chairman of Safety and Transportation. Councilman Bob DeJohn will chair our Building Committee. We will move to the left, and we would typically have Mrs. Diane Snyder there, and she will be the chairman of our Legislative Committee. Councilman Don Mano will be our council representative for Park and Recreation Committee, and Councilwoman Susan Sabetta will be chairman of our Finance Committee. And lastly, we have our big three. We have Mayor Anthony DeSico, Finance Director Bob Tribby, and our Law Director Paul Murphy. And we should never forget the young woman who really puts all of these council meetings together, our Deputy Clerk of Courts, Lisa Benedetti, in the corner. Now may I ask, does any other member of council have any other announcements for this evening? Look in that corner. Next, we'll begin with reports of our officers, and we'll begin with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening. I'd like to echo your thoughts and welcoming back council members Donna Finney and Councilwoman Diane Snyder, who is ill this evening. We wish her well. and also congratulate you and Council President Pro Tem Joe Mercurio on their reappointments, and we look forward to working with all of you. It's been a busy start to the new year for all of our departments. Employees are just finishing year-end housekeeping and are jumping right into budget preparations, events and activities, new programs, and unfortunately, snow plowing. I guess we couldn't dodge it forever. News on NOPEC. The program, well, let me say that NOPEC is providing press releases and other informational brochures that very soon will be posted on our various media outlets, along with links to NOPEC. Their customer service telephone number will be included in the correspondence. Since I've received some inquiries and we want to be sure to get this information out in every possible manner, I want to take some time tonight to provide initial information. In November, voters approved a governmental opt-out electric and natural gas aggregation program for the city of Mayfield Heights. City Council and myself selected Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, or NOPEC, to best manage the program. By joining NOPEC, the city expects to save the average household approximately 6% per year on their electricity supply, with similar savings on the natural gas supply. Cleveland Electric Illuminating and Dominion East Ohio Gas will continue to deliver the power and natural gas to your home or business, repair the pipes and meters, and will continue to send you your utility bill. Nothing changes other than the discounted energy supply available through this new program, which is the opt-out aggregation. NOPEC will send 2 separate letters to eligible addresses at the beginning of February, one for natural gas and one for electricity. Ineligible addresses will not receive the letters. Ineligible addresses include those that are on a percentage of income discount program, who are in contract with another supplier, or who are delinquent on their on their utility bill payments. Contained therein will be instructions on how to opt out with a 20-day opt-out required. Since this is an opt-out program, those wishing to participate will be automatically enrolled. No action is necessary to participate. If you choose to participate, you simply discard the opt-out card and you're automatically enrolled. Those wishing to opt out can easily do so by following the instructions on the opt-out letter. There's no opt-out fee for natural gas. There is a $25 opt-out fee for electricity that is waived during the initial enrollment. The first letter provides a 20-day opt-out letter. After the initial 20-day opt-out period, another notice will be sent providing additional 10 days to opt out. Any who have not opted out after this 30-day period will be enrolled with NOPEC. As part of our agreement with NOPEC, the city will receive $5 per household enrolled in the program. The grant funds may be used for energy-efficient capital improvement projects. They will provide us with the grant total once enrollment is completed. I am pleased that we're able to offer this cost savings to our residents. And Kimball, I am similarly pleased that we were able to return to curbside recycling to our residents. Residents should have received an introductory mailing from Kimball Companies. They won the bid to be our new refuse and recycling contractor. A public meeting will be held Wednesday, January 20th at 7 p.m. at the DeJohn Community Center so that residents can meet our new contractor, hear about the new receptacles, and learn about the return of curbside recycling. Details on accepted items and how to prepare them for pickup will be presented. Information about recycling opportunities for those who reside in apartments or condominiums will be discussed as well. Trash collection days will be the same. Time schedule may change from what we had with the previous vendor, so be sure that you have your trash on your curb by 7 a.m. Curbside recycling will make a return when the new trash recycling receptacles are delivered to homes by May 2016. We held off on delivery so that residents didn't have to contemplate storage and use during the winter months. Of course, we've had a very mild winter, and it doesn't look like such a good idea now, but our thoughts were in the right spot. Anyway, the trash receptacle has a capacity of 96 gallons, and the recycling receptacle has a capacity of 64 gallons. The capacities of these receptacles are quite sufficient, but on occasion, when there is overflow, it can be the overflow can be placed in bags or other containers at the curb for collection. Residents are able to opt out of the containers. Should you opt out, you will be limited to 2 bags of trash per week. The recycling center at the community center will be reduced to 2 bins and will be available only during specific and limited times. These bins will remain available so that our residents who reside in apartments and condominiums may continue to participate in the recycling program. Again, detailed information will be available at the public meeting on January 20th at 7 p.m. at the DeJohn Community Center. I urge all residents to please attend. Change in polling locations has been discussed with the Board of Elections. The school cited reasonable and justified concerns about safety of children and lack of parking availability while school is in session. So the Board of Elections will accommodate the elimination of the middle school as a polling location by making the following moves. They will move Precinct M, which is the Lander Haven Court and the Woodhawk condo area, from the Ross C. DeJohn Community Center to Our Savior Lutheran Church on Som Center Road. They will also move Precinct D, which is the Piercefield, Aldenham, and Giese Bonnie Lane area, and E, which is the Cordova Queens Park area, from the middle school to the Ross C. DeJohn Community Center. All other precincts will remain unchanged. These moves will be made prior to the March 15th presidential primary election. All affected voters will receive a voting location notification card informing them of the change. In addition, new voting location signs will be placed at the middle school, Precinct D and E, and the Ross C. DeJohn Center, Precinct M, for the next 2 elections, informing voters of the change. And have you lived in Mayfield Heights for over 50 years? If so, you qualify to be a gold resident. Applications are available at City Hall and the Community Center and on our website. The induction ceremony will be held on Friday, June 24th, and application deadline is April 22nd. And it is with sadness that I report the passing of K-9 Officer Duke. He retired last year and was living with his handler, Patrolman Mealy, and his family. We appreciate Duke's service and work as a Goodwill Ambassador during his 8 years with the police department. And finally, the State of the City edition of the City Focus will be out at the end of the month. All of the information about NOPEC and curbside recycling will be included, along with the year-end reports from all of our departments and upcoming programs and event information. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Mrs. Finney?
Yes, thank you. Mayor, the only question I have is, and I'm sure people are going to be so excited about the curbside recycling. I've been hearing about this for a long time. But what happens if somebody does put more than 2 bags of garbage out? Good question.
They're only taking 2. No.
We'll probably have to work through that for the
Eeny,
first
meeny,
little
miny,
while,
moe.
for the first few times. I would encourage them to please only put out 2 bags. I'm sure we'll get a good idea after the initial round of pickups and get a better idea from Kimball as to what people are putting out, how much they're putting out, and if we have to, we could just give them a little reminder of how much they can put out.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor? Mr. Mano?
That 2-bag limit now, that's for people who choose not to use the provided bins,
Correct, those who opt out.
the ones who opt out.
Correct.
Other than that, if you have the bin and you have 2 or 3 or 4 bags more than the bin will hold, you can put that out.
Let me check,
Yes.
just to make sure. I'm pretty sure you could.
Yes.
That's what I understood.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it too, and that's the way I said it didn't I? I hope.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood then.
Oh, I thought you meant the-
on top of the recycling,
No,
you can
no.
only have 2 bags.
Mr. Fernaro, would you like to clarify that?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, good clarification. Anything else for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to a report from our Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no report this evening, but with regard to resolution number 2016-1 regarding URS Corporation, I did do a memo late this afternoon, but there are still questions regarding that, so I'd request that be placed on first reading this evening, and we'll clarify things for the next council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? We will move on to a report from our Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
I passed out to all of you a year-end report. Also gave, of course, a copy to the mayor. I'd like to advise everyone that we finish with a positive balance in the general fund. We have $33,000 balance carried forward to add to our previous unencumbered balances. We spent basically $21,930,000. I mean, we collected $21,930,000 and spent $21,907,000. So we are once again in the black. Not by much. It's technically 0.14%, but everything counts.
Good job, Mr. Tribby. Are there any questions for Mr. Tribby? Mr. Dion?
I'd also like to say good job, Mr. Tribby.
Keep us in the black.
Buy a lottery ticket?
Pardon me?
Did you buy a lottery ticket?
Well, that's a good idea, you know. If we win $1 billion in the general fund, you know. Just kidding, of course, folks.
Microphone? It was Bob. Okay.
Sharia curse.
We next will move on to reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll begin with the building committee, and we'll start with Mr. Mano. If you have a report from last year that you need to,
Only wondering where the fence ordinance is at this point. It was supposed to go to planning, I believe, for review before it went to the law director.
I can answer that question.
thank you.
Since we had a new planning member and we got the ordinance, was it last week or 2 weeks? We got it kind of, we wanted to make sure everybody had enough time to review it, so it's going to be on the next planning, which is Monday.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. And Mr. DeJohn will be taking over that building committee. Excuse me. We'll move on to Finance and Audit Committee. Mr. Mercurio?
I have no report this evening, but kudos to Mr. Tribby as well for sharing the good news with us.
Thank you. And Mrs. Sabetta will be Chair of our Finance Committee as we move forward. Our Legislative Committee was Mr. Monaco. He is not here. Mrs. Snyder will be taking over that position. I don't believe we have a report from our Legislative Committee this evening. Public Works and Services would be Mr. Sharia, who we also miss not being here. Mr. Mercurio will be chairing that committee. I don't know if you have anything about snow or salt or anything for this evening.
No, just kudos to Mr. Fernaro and the Service Department for getting out there yesterday and getting the streets cleared. You guys did a great job. And I don't think I'll be quite as colorful in my reports as Mr. Sharia, but I'll give it a good shot.
No, we do expect an entertaining report. We'll move on to the Recreation and Parks Committee, and that was Mrs. Sabetta, and she's handed me her report. And It says we will be holding our third annual middle school dodgeball tournament and pool and dance party on Friday, January 22nd from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Wildcat Sports Center. The cost of the tickets will be $10 pre-sale, $12 at the door, and that will include pizza and drinks. No other money is needed for the evening. Tickets will be sold during lunch in the middle school cafeteria starting next Tuesday. The annual Taste of Italy adult dinner will be held on Saturday, February 27th at the Ross C. DeJohn Community Center. The doors will open at 6:30 and tickets will go on sale January 27th. And you can call the Recreation Department at 442-2627 for more information. And the Wildcat Sport and Fitness Center is the place to get started on that New Year's resolution, whether it's walking or working out with weights, cardio machines, or a joint fitness class. Stop by for a tour of the facility to find out more about the best kept secret in Mayfield. Individual membership rates are $32. A family rate is $105. Senior citizens, $12 for the year. Can't beat that. So thank you, Mrs. Sabetta, for putting that together. And Mr. Manna will be the council representative moving forward in 2016. And our Safety and Transportation Committee is Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. The only thing I have is the video camera legislation for the retailers, and especially our secondhand dealer retailers. They're still working on that. I did check last week at Neighborhood Watch, and that legislation will be coming to us or to Mr. Murphy in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you would share anything that you have in the wheel right now with Mrs. Finney, she will be chairwoman of the Safety and Transportation Committee. We would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our Board of Zoning Appeals will be Mr. Mercurio. Do you have anything to report this evening?
I do. We have a meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock right here in council chambers, and we have one item on tomorrow night's agenda.
And congratulations to Mr. Mercurio. He was reappointed for a new term on our Board of Zoning Appeals. He does a terrific job there.
Thank you.
And the Commission on Aging is the committee that I sit on right now. We met on January 5th. Judy Stofan was nominated and sworn in as chairperson, and Peggy Zimmer was nominated and sworn in as co-chair. So congratulations to both of these lovely ladies. Stacy O'Brien from our Community Partnership on Aging reported that donations were delivered to 25 homes during the holiday season. And she wanted to thank Sean Ward and our Director of Park and Recreation, and Joe Finaro, for their service in assisting her with delivering the excess items from our Cruiser drive that we had. So thank you to both of you sitting in the back for your assistance. Mrs. O'Brien really appreciated it. The mayor announced he will be disbanding and or reorganizing the Commission on Aging to become a subcommittee, possibly, of Park and Recreation. And since most of the functions that have been part of the Commission on Aging since its inception have now been taken over by the Community Partnership on Aging, there are very few activities that come from this commission. Right now, the only thing that the commission is really working on are social dances. So the mayor is working on how to reorganize this commission. Let's see, what else? Our next Commission on Aging meeting is scheduled for February 2nd here in council chambers, if we're going to have that meeting or not. Next, we'll move on to the Planning Commission, and that's Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you. Planning Commission met on December 21st to discuss the Winking Lizard project, which is on the backside of Eastgate Shopping Center, south of Target. We had a unanimous decision to approve the preliminary plans for this project. The commission did receive approval reports for the restaurant from our traffic engineer and police and fire departments. A landscaping buffer on the south side of the restaurant was satisfactorily addressed by Mr. Hoffman. In addition, Mr. Hoffman addressed the parking situation and concluded the restaurant will not dramatically change the current situation of parking at Eastgate. Currently, Eastgate is at 94% of the required parking spaces. The restaurant will reduce this to roughly around 90%. It was the opinion of Mr. Hoffman that parking in this area where the restaurant was going to go was underutilized anyways. If the Planning Commission does uphold the council's, or if the Planning Commission decision is upheld tonight by the council, then final plans for this project will come back to the Planning Commission, and construction is not planned until the spring of the year. Also on our agenda tonight will be resolution number 2016-3, the lot split in Hidden Woods. This resolution is just asking for time to record this lot split, which was approved by this council, and I don't remember the day that it was approved. At our next Planning Commission meeting, we'll be discussing the fence ordinance, which was brought up earlier, and after that review will be brought back to council, and will go on, it will be up for 3 readings. One final note, I want to acknowledge the retirement of Mr. David Degovics, who was president of the Planning Commission for the past 15 years. I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Degovics for the past 2.5 years. From day one, Mr. Degovics always impressed me with his knowledge and leadership abilities. He was truly an asset to the residents of Mayfield Heights. He will greatly be missed, and I'd like to wish him the best of luck in his retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dijon. Any questions for Mr. Dijon? Okay. Mr. Dijon was nominated to remain our council representative on the Planning Commission for 2016 and 2017. We will now move on to the Mayfield Union Cemetery. Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Mayfield Union Cemetery Committee met on Wednesday, December 30th, 2015 at 4:30 at the cemetery. The members are Ed Hargate, Highland Heights, myself, Mayfield Heights, and Patsy Mills, Mayfield Village. Members were giving expenditures for the year 2015 and balances of accounts Mayfield Union Cemetery number 283 and Mayfield Union Trust Fund number 804. Projected expenses for the year of 2016 were discussed. The work and supplies at the cemetery with Roger Remnick will perform. The supplies needed for Garden Club as an annual flower planting, mulch, and fertilizer. Westfield Insurance, which will be paid an annual $500. Possible removal of large trees on the south driveway. Driveway in cemetery is in need of some slag replacement. Mayfield Village Service Department has done this before. The Mayfield Village Service Department mows the grass weekly at no cost. Memorial Day flags are placed on the graves by the Boy Scouts or volunteers at no cost. The flags are removed and given to the Boy Scouts for proper disposal. Wreaths are placed on the wrought iron fence at holiday time at no cost. The wreath was placed on the Halliday grave site, 12/15/2015. The cost was $25 paid by the Mayfield Union Trust Fund. The annual dues, $1,000 for cemetery maintenance due January 2016. Mayfield Village will send the invoice. The meeting adjourned a little after 5 p.m. Council does have a copy of the year-end report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Taking Mrs. Sabetta's place on the Mayfield Union Cemetery will be our chairwoman, Donna Finney. And Donna, as Mrs. Sabetta stated, you'll work with Patsy Mills from Mayfield Village and Ed Hargate from Highland Heights. And I'd spoken to Mrs. Mills. She said that many times they meet on a Tuesday for their meetings, and they don't have more than probably 4 meetings a year. So if you can make an effort to represent us and be there, that would be terrific.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. On the back of that report, it says that they were trying to get a meeting together. Is that still trying to take place?
No.
It's
that
done.
That was us getting the meeting together on
Okay.
the 30th.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you both. We will now move on to our public portion, and pursuant to Section 121.02, Section H8 of our codified ordinance, each person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire public portion. Although this is not a time for public debate, this is your opportunity to address council with any of your concerns. Please note that there will be no personal attacks or comments allowed this evening. If you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address City Council. If you would like to be heard, please raise your hand, be recognized, approach the podium, and state your name and address. It is now 7:34, and we will open the public portion. Is Mr. Balistraya?
Good evening, council, mayor. Boy, it's been a long time since I've been up here.
Mr. Balistraya, now you know the rules, your name
Mike
and
Balstraya,
address.
6614 Hidden Woods Trail.
Thank you.
Congratulations, ladies, on your victory. Well deserved. I'm here with regards to what Mr. DeJohn had brought up earlier. It's Resolution 2016-3, asking council to approve an extension so the split and consolidation can be finalized. The reason for the delay was my neighbor at 6618 Hidden Woods had come into some financial difficulties and wasn't able to pay his portion of the final plans. I'm pleased to tell you that everything has been taken care of and the plans were released and in the hands of the building department. I then asked building director to forward an extension request to Mr. Murphy, and that's why it is in front of you this evening. We need the extension to get all the signatures signed and the final plans to the county for recording. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now or when the matter comes up. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Balistraya. Mr. Hoffman.
I'm Andrew Hoffman. I'm here representing Eastgate Shopping Center. Owner is Cosmo Eastgate Limited, 30201 Aurora Road. Mr. DeJohn very ably summarized my submission to the Planning Commission and the preliminary approval that was granted. Basically, the site plan that we submitted is the product of the discussions and the agreements we had with the Board of Zoning Appeals as well as City Council at the prior meeting. So we flipped the patio of the proposed Winking Lizard to the west side of the property. We withdrew our request for a 20-foot setback, and we'll proceed with a 30-foot setback. And in fact, the entirety of the building virtually is west of the westernmost building line of Gates Mills Villa. So there's no direct sight line from ground level. As Mr. DeJohn noted, and the larger issue with parking is that simply there is no issue. Eastgate has always been blessed, if you will, with an abundance of parking. The loss of even as much as 102 to 108 spaces will only bring us down to 90%, whereas Planning Commission has the authority to grant approvals for parking ratios that are as low as 67%. Well, we're at 90% of what's required. And I'm highly confident that the construction of the Winking Lizard will cause no parking issues. And the final issue really is landscaping, which at the last City Council meeting, we had committed, as we had from the very beginning, to use landscaping as a buffer, rather than having to build a 6-foot-high wall. And so our plan, however, is not simply to build a fortress of trees, because we think, in our estimation, that having this little stand of trees surrounding the restaurant on two sides would look actually a little foolish. And so what our goal is to have a combination of trees and bushes and grasses on a mounded 30-foot length that separates the restaurant and Gates Mills Villa. And our concept is to have enough of a variation of various plant types that it will look aesthetically pleasing as well as providing some sort of visual buffer. And again, I would remind council, as we are in the process of preparing our submission to the Architectural Review Board, that the south side of the restaurant will actually be as visually interesting as the front side. There will be diners sitting at windows facing the south side. It's not going to be, quite honestly, the way the rest of the back of Eastgate looks. It'll be much more interesting anyway, but having said that, we fully intend to have a landscaping plan that is visually and that is a buffer, but has an interesting aesthetic appeal. We will be submitting a formal landscape plan to the Planning Commission for our final approval of the site plan. We expect to do that later this week and then have it discussed and considered by Planning Commission on Monday the 18th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? We have Senator Yuko in the audience. Please come forward. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor, Happy New Year, Council President, members of council. I had to come up here tonight. I was a little concerned. I was sitting at home in Richmond Heights. It was awfully quiet up here. And then I just realized Paul Sharia's not around anymore. So that kind of explains that situation, doesn't it? But I want to really just come up here and wish everybody a Happy New Year and to congratulate our newly elected or re-elected or newly elected re-elected in some cases, however you want to put it. And just as I gave some recognition to our outgoing council people, I brought some senatorial citations which I'd like to present to you, Gail, and for Donna, and well, we'll do it to Diane in a roundabout way if I may.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's so kind. Thank you.
Glad to have you back.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Back to Diane. We will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody
In case the
wait.
lights go out, Don's tie lights.
Well, thank you, everybody. Happy New Year. Hey, phone call away. Evening call in. Okay. Commissioner Northeast Ohio, we're in Columbus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Always nice to see you.
Good seeing you.
Bye-bye.
Happy
And the
New
thing
Year.
about the
New Year.
senator, he means it. If you call him,
He's there. You are
always
correct.
there. Yes.
He is everywhere and always in a suit and shirt and tie. Is there anyone else this evening? Oh, you're. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard this evening? It is now 7:42 and we will close the public portion. Okay, we will move on to our resolutions this evening, and we will begin with Resolution 2016-1. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2016-1, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an amendment to the agreement with URS Corporation to provide additional professional consulting services in connection with the expansion and renovation of the Mayfield Heights Police Department and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Do I have a motion to place Resolution 2016-1 on first reading? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Finney. roll call on the motion to place Resolution 2016-1 on first reading.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes,
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Resolution 2016-1 has been placed on first reading. We will move on to Resolution 2016-2. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Resolution 2016-2, a resolution authorizing the mayor to issue a purchase order to Statewide Ford Lincoln for the purchase of 3 vehicles for the police department. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
yes,
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. The resolution is for the approval of 3 SUV vehicles for our police department. And we received a memo from Mr. Tribby. Mr. Tribby, would you like to add anything?
No, it's self-explanatory, and you also received a letter from Chief Bittner also.
Okay, and Mr. Tribby's, Mr. Mano.
Does mayor participate in that state program?
Yes, he does. He had the opportunity, actually, they did bid. They could not beat Statewide's price. They tried hard. We wanted to give them the business, so to speak. But it just couldn't be worked out, unfortunately. But they'll do all of our maintenance and upkeep on them, so.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Tribby's memo tells us that the money has been appropriated in our equipment fund.
That's correct.
Any other discussion or comments? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
yes,
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Resolution 2016-2 has been approved. We will move on to 2016-3. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2016-3, a resolution extending the time to record a lot split of permanent parcel number 862-20-049 and consolidation into permanent parcel numbers 862-20-033 and 862-20-034. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
yes,
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. In 2014, the resolution 2014-12 came before council for approval for the lot split. And we're just going to extend that so the consolidation can get, I forgot what Mr. Balistrate said, so it can get recorded and signed by everyone. I apologize. Is there any other comment or discussion? Mr. Murphy, would you like to add anything? Is there anything to add?
Nothing to add except for the fact that this is necessitated because the codified ordinances provide that this type of lot split would expire within 18 months. And I think it was April of 2014 that it was approved, so it has expired. And the legislation provides that it's got to be done by June 30th.
Thank you. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
yes,
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Resolution 2016-3 has been approved. We'll move on to Resolution 2016-4. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Resolution number 2016-4, a resolution confirming the intention of the City of Mayfield Heights to sell property that is unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for city purposes via internet auctions and authorizing the use of certain representative websites to conduct the internet auctions. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes?
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. And do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Finney. In the past, I know we've sold obsolete or unneeded equipment via the internet and govdeals.com. Would you like to add anything, Mr. Tribby?
No, it's worked out really well. Get quite a few large circulation of this particular way. In the past, we used to advertise in the local paper. Here you've got literally almost countrywide. We sold some of the vehicles to folks that are really far away from here. In fact, I'm surprised they actually bid, given the travel and
And they came in
that
to
type
pick
of
it
thing,
up.
but it just worked out well.
And what do you do if we don't sell what we're offering?
Well, we've not had to face that issue.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
now that you brought that up, well,
Well, you just wonder if it
I'm
doesn't.
kidding. It's
Yeah, I guess
hasn't
we
been an
will.
issue. Some items sell for very small amounts, but
But they sell.
yeah.
Good. Mr. DeJohn, did you have a question for Mr. Tribby?
Can you give us some examples of things you sell?
Mainly motor vehicles, but there's also, I know the police department sold a lot of bikes that had been recovered, and they try to identify the owners. And there's also some properties occasionally that are, shall we say, confiscated from folks who obtained them improperly. And again, we try to get them returned to the rightful owners, and if not, then we also sell that on GovDeals too.
Thank you.
And the money goes into general fund for the general property, or with the vehicles, it goes in the equipment fund.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tribby. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes?
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes, Resolution 2016-4 has been approved. We have no ordinances on our agenda this evening, so we will move on to motions. We have 5 motions on the agenda, and we'll begin with number 1, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Motion to approve a preliminary site plan for a new 7,400 square foot freestanding restaurant building with a lesser number of parking spaces, 90%, being not less than 67% of the required spaces, in accordance with section 1189.07B, separate or combined use of facilities for the Winking Lizard at 1355 Somme Center Road, Eastgate Shopping Center.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Again, this is to approve the preliminary site plan for the Winking Lizard for the lesser number of parking spaces. Any other discussion, comments? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes?
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. This motion has been carried. We'll move on to the next motion. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. Motion to approve the renewal of the contract between the City of Mayfield Heights and the Cleveland Restoration Society for the continuation of the Heritage Home Program in the amount of $6,850 for 2016.
Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. We have done this the last few years with the Heritage Home Program. Mayor, would you like to elaborate? I know you sent us all a memo on this.
Thank you. Exactly. The memo is pretty self-explanatory. It just shows the success and usage of the Heritage Home Program. There were 34 inquiries, 21 instances of technical assistance, 17 site visits, and 1 loan application which was signed. And they also sent, which I included in the memo, some examples of projects or site visits, I should say, and a description of them, and then also what the featured loan was used for. So I think it's just another tool and another avenue for our residents to help them maintain their homes.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other discussion? Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes, I would like to state that in the third paragraph, it's really nice that they're saying in the new year that it's going to be informative presentations about the program will be offered throughout the county. And these sessions will be organized by geography to provide residents with the opportunity to hear about the program in person. And that's, really how you should see how they work is in person.
And I
think
believe we
that's
have
good.
had someone come forward, last year or the year before, we did have someone who came and did a short presentation on this program. And it's great that they're gonna be coming out again.
Well, yeah, if
This
I
is-
could, yeah,
Mayor?
that was what you're talking about, Mrs. Tracy, I think was when they came to the meeting.
Yes.
This is opportunity that they're gonna have countywide to have informational meetings for groups of residents to come and get more information and more hands-on type dialogue with them.
And will they do that in the community building, set that up through your office and do it? in
Well,
the
I don't
community
believe
building?
it's gonna be community, I don't think they could do it in each community. I think they're gonna divide it geographically and have meetings that way.
Close by. Thank you.
We'll let everybody know as soon as we get that information.
Terrific, thank you. Roll call on the motion to approve?
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes,
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes, this motion has been carried. We'll move on to our next motion, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Motion to approve the expenditure from the Community Relations Fund of $1,500 for silver level sponsorship of the Green Tie Gala in support of the Mayfield STEM 2M program and the Mayfield Innovation Center.
Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Again, this program benefits the STEM 2M, Innovation Center, and if anyone has been to the Innovation Center, it is really just an amazing place. The students have already produced a prosthetic hand for a child. There's so much going on, and this gala will really help the school system with their funding. So I know a few of us on council have already said we would be attending this gala, so it's nice that the city is supporting it with a silver sponsorship. Any other comments about? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney? Mrs. Sabetta?
yes,
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes, this motion has been carried. We will move on to our next motion. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Motion to designate two appointees to the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council for the term April 1, 2015 to March 31, 2018.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. DeJohn. Seconded by Mr. Mano. Mayor?
Lisa, have we heard from the appointees?
Council needs to appoint two people, so you'll need to amend this motion to include the names. And it could be council members or anybody else.
Okay. Oh, I understand. I thought you meant the other appointees. I gotcha. Okay.
No, these are the council appointments.
So,
So, are we taking nominations for that tonight, or?
that's my,
We want to table that?
I don't know if we want to table it. Do we want to table it?
Or put it on, well,
What?
Yeah, my recommendation would be if you want to, since it involves somewhat the housing or buildings stock of the city, maybe you want to appoint somebody from planning, who's the planning rep, or somebody from either Board of Zoning Appeals or the Building Commission, or one of those could be your considerations. I would think that would make the most sense.
So, do we nominate?
I'll nominate myself.
I'll second that nomination for Mr. DeJohn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I have a question, though, I'm sorry. But this says 4/1/2015. Does this need to have a different date on it? So what happened to the
They-
people that were on it before?
It expired. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yep, I was gonna say, right, it expired last April, but they don't meet until February, March of the following year, so that is correct date.
Right, thank you.
I'll nominate myself too. I'll be on it with Mr. DeJohn.
I'll second that nomination. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Mano? So we need a,
Motion to designate Bob and Donna.
so we need a motion to designate Mr. DeJohn and Mr. Mano to the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council.
So moved.
Seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The nominations, the motion has carried. We can go with that. Now we'll move on to our next motion, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Motion to designate the Deputy Clerk of Council as the designee to receive public records training representing council members Donna Finney, Diane Snyder, and Gail Teresi for the term commencing January 1, 2016 to December 31, 2019, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 109.43B and 149.43E1.
Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Discussion?
Can we make a motion to have them go in person?
No, we cannot, Mr. DeJohn, but thank you anyway. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes, this motion has carried. We will now move on to new business or comments from council. Hearing, Mr. DeJohn?
I just wanted to say,
You are
I
taking
went to
Mr.
that
Sharia's
training.
spot.
I went to that training a couple years ago and found it very valuable, so. And, Lisa, if you can let me know when the training is coming up this year, I'd appreciate it.
Does anyone else have any comments, new business to share?
I can also say that the training is online and very easy to take.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Finney. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you and good night. Our meeting is adjourned.